Our next speaker is Art Sobczak. Art is the president of Business by Phone, and for over 30 years, Art has helped inside and outside sales professionals in virtually all B2B industries craft and deliver effective, persuasive messaging to get in, get through, and sell using the phone. He's known for his no-nonsense, non-salesy, no gimmicks, conversational methods that salespeople feel comfortable using and prospects and customers feel relaxed engaging with. He's the publisher of the upcoming training program, LinkedIn for Sales Success, and a wonderful guy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Art Sobczak.
Well, thank you. That was nice. And thank you for joining me. I'm going to share with you what is working to cut through the noise, create interest with buyers, and ultimately sell to them. First, thanks also to InsideSales.com and all of the great sponsors who are making this program possible. It's a huge undertaking, and I'm amazed at the amount and the quality of the material here. I'm enjoying the programs. I'm coming to you today from my studio in Scottsdale, Arizona. I've decided to use a real camera instead of a webcam and having a goofy talking head in the corner of your screen there. So I'm going to be using some slides, and hopefully they're going to play nice with the technology that we have here. All right, let's get started. We live in an ignorance environment. Ignorance in that people ignore most messages that come their way, from 300 to 3,000 messages daily, depending on where you're getting your information. But some people are getting through, and I'm going to share with you the strategies that are working. And some are specific techniques that sales pros are using to set themselves apart, really set themselves apart and get in. I posed a question to my over 55,000 subscribers to my weekly sales tips newsletter, and I asked them what's working for them. And I was overwhelmed with responses. And I'm going to share some of those with you. I don't have time to go through all of them. There were a couple hundred, but don't worry. I've decided to compile a report of all those great ideas, and I'll tell you at the end of this and how you can get access to that. It's going to be free, don't worry. So here we go. Have possible value. The first strategy, or actually requirement, for everything related to getting to buyers is having some possible targeted and customized value. I call it possible value since we can't tell someone what is valuable. Value is what they think it is. Every attempt to connect and message to your prospect has got to contain something in it for the buyer. The reason most messages are ignored and why most people are screened out is that they don't appeal to something the listener's interested in at that very moment. There's no value in a salesperson talking about how good he feels his company is. A buyer doesn't care if you want to get together and explore mutually beneficial opportunities. They don't have time for that. Here's a very important point about value. I suggest that you write this down. Yeah, feel free to tweet it, actually. Value is not the thing or the stuff that you sell. It is always the result that the buyer gets. Next, your value needs to be targeted, personalized, and tailored. Generic messages are like bulk direct mail addressed to occupant. As long as I've been in sales, I've been teaching that we need to answer the what's in it for them question. The good news is that we have more sales intelligence available to us than at any time in history. The premise of my SMART call methodology is that we must individualize our messaging to prospects in order to be relevant and gain their attention. In fact, buyers today expect salespeople to have done their research. Otherwise, they're blown off quickly. You should never ask questions about things that are readily available on someone's website. Now, I'm going to share what top sellers are doing to get some of their best real-time intelligence, and that comes from people in your prospect's organization. It's called social engineering. It's simply asking questions of anyone in the prospect's organization. You can ask some basic factual questions at the lower levels of an organization and more specific situational and need-type questions the higher up that you go. Now, be sure to talk to users of your product or service who might not be a decision maker but could be an influencer. Now, let's talk about another great source of help and information. The salespeople who are getting through understand that assistants are assistants to the buyer and can provide assistance to them as well. Personally, I avoid using the negative terms screeners and gatekeepers and methodologies like getting past the gatekeeper and avoid giving them any information. I've got files of success stories of how assistants have helped salespeople get their message to the buyer, arranged meetings, and even influenced purchases. Right now, I'm going to share a quick tip about assistants that I've just implemented with a client to get messages replied to. It's called the 2 things technique. We all know that an assistant's not going to write down a long message for their boss, right? So let's simplify it and strengthen it in the process. If the assistant offers to take a message, or you can ask, even if they don't offer, ask them to write down 2 things. Now make them results-oriented and brief and something that piques curiosity. For example, Pat, could you please just write down 2 things for the doctor? First, more new patients, and second, no increase in marketing expense. Now, we're finding this increases callbacks and the likelihood the person will take the call the next time if they're available. Something else that sales pros who are getting in are doing is using LinkedIn extensively. Not just having an account, but really leveraging it. It's really no longer an option if you are serious about prospecting. Of course, there's a wrong way to use LinkedIn. A bad salesperson will still be a bad salesperson if they're using LinkedIn. That's not going to help them. To have success, you still need to do all the other things that we talked about, namely having possible value when you're looking to connect or get an introduction. There are lots of LinkedIn resources out there online, and we do a regular webinar on the 7 LinkedIn mistakes that kill sales and what you can do instead and what you can say in your messaging. And I'll share that with you at the end of this program as well. Okay, so how about a few quick tips, and then we'll go into the unique, really fun stuff. This technique I call the quick question. Many people use email at their first attempt to connect. That's fine. What doesn't work is generic blasts that give a sales pitch. The email, like an opening statement or a voicemail, should pique curiosity and plant a question that they want the answer to. The subject line is the key to getting your email opened, and it's the reason most are ignored. One that we're using successfully, and others tell me works for them as well, is the quick question subject line. Now, you put quick question in the subject line, but then of course the key there is hinting at some value in the body that they want to hear about. Jeff Wiebe with Sprague Pest Control shared that he uses a shorter version of this. Yeah, he just puts question in the subject line. He says it always gets his email opened. That's a pretty good success rate. Another technique is the just reply with yes or no. This is usually the final step in a process after repeated attempts. You leave it on a voicemail, first again stating your possible value, and then letting them know that if this is not something that would be a priority for them right now, if they could just please hit reply and say yes or no in the email that they're going to be receiving. Also, you can add that if it's yes, if they could just give a couple times they would be available. I have sales reps who tell me that this does get replies, yes and no, which is great since you have a decision, and that's better than continuing to call somebody that's never going to buy from you. In our electronic messaging society, what works well is sending something physical to prospects. What works today as well as ever is about as low tech as you can get. It's a personalized, handwritten note with a live stamp. These get opened. This sets you apart from the masses, and they're cheap. Your message, when you write it, shouldn't be long. It should be, again, that you're just trying to pique curiosity and pave the way for your follow-up call. Now, here's an idea that requires a bit of an investment. Now, the key word here is investment, meaning it also provides a return. And that's sending books to prospects. You can send a popular or niche business book relevant to the prospect's business. Put an inscription on the inside. It doesn't matter if you didn't write the book, you can write the inscription. If you know the person's interests and hobbies from their LinkedIn profile, send a book about that. I'm a competition barbecue cook, and a sales rep who knew that about me sent me a book on barbecue. I took his follow-up call. Personally, I send copies of my Smart Calling book, which always gets me in when I say I'm the guy who sent the book on prospecting. I know you might be thinking, well, you've never written a book, but listen to this next story, and perhaps you can. 5 years ago, Chuck Hammond started a company called Sleepyhead. They make a powdered drink that helps you sleep. He felt that hotels would be a perfect target for them to make it available for their patrons who couldn't sleep at night. And it'd be a goodwill gesture as well. And he said he needed to get through to general managers and operations managers. And that was a bit of a challenge since those buyers are really tough to reach. Sounds like a lot of our buyers, right? So he said cold calls, drop-ins, and emails just weren't cutting it. So he wrote a book, a children's book to be exact. It depicted a stick figure character who can't sleep at hotels. The manager provided Sleepyhead, and everyone lives happily ever after. He put together a box containing his book, an MP3 player. The book was also narrated, of course, on the MP3 player. A handwritten letter, sound familiar? And samples of Sleepyhead. And it worked like crazy. He got through to 80% of his prospects, compared to 7% before. And they were excited to speak with him. It's like a dream come true, he said. Now, this might not be for everyone, but how might you be able to make something like that work? Now, Chuck actually has a site where he details how he did it. I've got that up on the screen there. And now he even offers the service itself to create the book and all the packaging. It's an unbelievably low investment, and I'm actually considering it myself. By the way, I'm not getting anything for sharing this with you. I just think it is such a great idea, and I've seen almost everything, and I hadn't seen this one before. All right, here's another unusual and fun way to set yourself apart, and also to personalize your message. Use cartoons. That's right. Who doesn't love to read cartoons? Readership surveys show they're almost always the best read and remembered part of magazines and newspapers. Now here's one that I received in my email. The subject line here said, "Here's a cartoon with your name." Well, of course I opened it. How cool is that? Well, it was from internationally known cartoonist Stu Hinkey, who wanted to interview me for his new book. Of course, I called him right away and agreed. Here's how you can use this. Stu's company has email and postcard programs that you can use to get attention and get in. Most people show an open rate with their emails that is double what they typically get. And I was blown away when I heard some of their case studies and success stories. Stu has a high-end service where they create their big board cartoons, usually personalized and sent to CEOs. It's kind of like you see there. A sales trainer targeted a group of Fortune 1000 CEOs. The big boards were hand-delivered by courier. Before the trainer could pick up the phone to follow up, each of the CEOs already called him, and every one of them agreed to meet. 2 bought starter training programs right on the spot, each worth about $50,000. Overall, he got a 100% response rate, not bad, and an 8,000% ROI on a campaign that cost him $5,000. So Stu's site is cartoonlink.com. Okay, so to summarize, people who are getting through have a personalized, tailored, possible value proposition. To do so, they do their homework. They do social engineering to gather intelligence. They view assistants as assistants, not screeners or gatekeepers. They're excellent at using LinkedIn, and they use unique, memorable techniques to set themselves apart and to enter into valuable sales conversations. It's not rocket science, and it doesn't need to be, and it shouldn't be. All right, so I promised you a couple of resources. We are in the process of compiling the report of what fellow salespeople are doing to get through. For those of you who are watching this live, it's going to be a few days, so bear with us here. If you're watching on a recording, you'll likely get it instantly. Okay. Also, you can attend one of the training webinars we do on the 7 LinkedIn mistakes that kill sales. So you can get both of these at this site, smartcalling.com/art. Thanks again for joining me, and enjoy the rest of the program. I'm Art Sobczak.